news came suddenly, and it didn't feel real. Darryl Sheets, the man millions knew as the gambler from Storage Wars, was found dead at the age of 67. At first, the headlines were brief. Then, the details started to emerge. Reports indicated that he was found inside his home in Arizona. Authorities began investigating the circumstances surrounding his death, and early information suggested the possibility of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. At the same time, other reports hinted at deeper layers, mentions of pressure, online harassment, and unanswered questions that left fans uncertain about what really happened in his final days. Was it a tragic personal moment, or the result of something building up over time? As the investigation continued, one thing became clear. This wasn't just the death of a television personality. It was the end of a story that had always been filled with risk, intensity, and unpredictability. Because Darryl Sheets was never an ordinary man. Long before the cameras, before the fame, and before the headlines, he was already living on the edge, making bold decisions, taking massive risks, and trusting instincts that most people would never dare to follow. So how did a man who built his legacy on winning big, on discovering hidden fortunes, on turning the unknown into opportunity, end up at the center of such a mysterious and tragic ending? To understand that, we have to go back to the beginning, to the world of abandoned storage units, to the chaos of auctions, and to the rise of a man who turned gambling into an art form. This is the full story of Darryl Sheets. How does a man who once uncovered millions of dollars hidden inside an abandoned storage unit end up becoming one of the most controversial and mysterious figures in reality TV history? This is not just the story of a television personality. This is the story of risk, instinct, success, and a life that constantly walked the line between genius and chaos. This is the story of Darryl Sheets, the man before the fame. Before the cameras, before the fame, and long before millions of viewers knew his name, Darryl Sheets was already living a life driven by instinct. He wasn't your typical businessman. He didn't follow safe strategies or predictable paths. Instead, he thrived in uncertainty. The world of storage auctions, where people bid on abandoned lockers without knowing what's inside, was the perfect environment for someone like him. To most people, it looked like gambling. To Darryl, it was gambling, but it was a calculated kind of chaos. A game where experience, intuition, and boldness could turn a forgotten storage unit into a life-changing discovery. And that's exactly what made him different. Rise to fame on Storage Wars. When Storage Wars premiered, it introduced the world to a hidden subculture, one filled with risk-takers, collectors, and opportunists. But among all the personalities, one stood out immediately: Darryl Sheets. He wasn't calm, he wasn't subtle, and he definitely wasn't cautious. He was loud, aggressive, and unapologetically bold. Nicknamed the Gambler, Darryl became known for his willingness to spend large amounts of money on storage units that others were too afraid to touch. He didn't just bid, he charged into auctions like a man who had nothing to lose and everything to prove. This made him incredibly entertaining to watch, but it also made him controversial. Some viewers admired his confidence. Others saw him as reckless, even arrogant. But one thing was undeniable: you could never ignore him. The legendary locker. Every legend has a defining moment. For Darryl Sheets, that moment came in the form of a single storage unit. At first glance, it looked like any other locker. Dusty, abandoned, unremarkable. But inside was something no one could have predicted. Cash, not a few $1,000s, not even hundreds of thousands. We're talking about millions. The discovery reportedly reached around $7.5 million, making it one of the most shocking finds in the history of storage auctions. It was the kind of moment that transforms a person into a legend overnight. But with that level of success came complications. Legal questions emerged, ownership disputes followed, and eventually, Darryl was forced to return a significant portion of the money. Still, the story spread like wildfire. To some, it proved he was a genius. To others, it was pure luck. But for Darryl, it reinforced one belief: taking risks was always worth it. The darker side of fame. Fame has a way of amplifying everything. both the good and the bad. For Darryl Sheets, the spotlight didn't just highlight his successes, it also exposed his struggles. Behind the bold personality and aggressive bidding style was a man dealing with real pressure. Years of high-stakes decisions, constant public attention, the expectation to always perform, to always win. And then, in 2019, everything changed. Darrell suffered a serious heart attack. It was a wake-up call, not just for him, but for his fans as well. The man who once seemed unstoppable was suddenly vulnerable. After the incident, he stepped back from the intense pace of auctions and television. His appearances became less frequent. His life slowed down. For the first time, it seemed like Darrell was no longer chasing the next big win. He was trying to hold on to something far more important: his health. Real or just reality TV? As Storage Wars grew in popularity, so did the questions. Was everything real, or was it all just entertainment? Some viewers began to speculate that parts of the show were staged, that certain discoveries were exaggerated, that personalities, including Darrell's, were amplified for the cameras. And honestly, they might have been. Reality TV often blurs the line between authenticity and performance. So, the question remains, was Darryl Sheets truly that aggressive, that fearless, that unpredictable? Or was he playing a role? The truth likely lies somewhere in between. Because even if the cameras enhanced his personality, the risks he took were very real. And so, were the consequences a shocking end? Then came the news that shocked fans around the world. Darryl Sheets had passed away at the age of 67. For many, it felt sudden, unexpected, difficult to process. This was a man who had lived loudly, boldly, fearlessly, and yet, his story ended in a way that left more questions than answers. Reports suggested that investigations were ongoing, and discussions surrounding the circumstances added a layer of mystery and sadness to the situation. What made it even more emotional was the contrast. A man who once found millions, who stood at the top of his game, who built a legacy through risk and instinct, now gone, leaving behind memories, controversy, and a story that people will continue to talk about for years. Thank you for watching. Please share your opinion about this topic. See you soon.